Hi everybody, I am Max Gray. Welcome to Metal Planet. Today I'm gonna do a review of The Sick, the Dying and the Dead, the new studio album by the American thrash metal band Megadeth. This album is the 16th studio album by Megadeth and was produced by the leader of the band Dave Mustaine in collaboration with Chris Rakestraw. The album was mixed by Josh Wilbur, who is known for his work with bands like Lamb of God, Soulfly, and Gojira. The album The Sick, the Dying and the Dead is the first studio album by Megadeth in 6 years since the release of their previous album Dystopia in 2016. This marks the longest gap between two studio albums in the band's career. The release of Megadeth's new album took more time than expected because Mustaine was diagnosed in 2019 with throat cancer. Fortunately, he had a great determination to beat this disease, in part because he had a desire to continue playing music. He became cancer-free a year later after many radiation and chemotherapy treatments. When announcing the news that he had beaten the disease, Mustaine explained that praying and thinking about his family and his fans helped him during the recovery process. Another situation happened during the recording process of The Sick, the Dying and the Dead. The original bassist of the band, David Ellefson, was caught in a scandal of sexual nature. At first, there were accusations of child grooming against him, but it was later confirmed that he did nothing illegal as the situation happened between consenting adults. Nonetheless, Ellefson was fired from the band as Mustaine felt the relationship he had at that point with the bassist was already strained. The bass parts Ellefson had recorded for the album were removed and were re-recorded by Steve DiGiorgio, the current bassist of the band Testament. DiGiorgio appeared on The Sick, the Dying and the Dead as a session musician. In addition to his appearance, The Sick, the Dying and the Dead also marks the debut of Dirk Verburen behind the drum kit on the Megadeth studio album. He formerly played in the band Soilwork, but became a permanent member of the American thrash metal band a few years ago. The first thing I noticed when listening to The Sick, the Dying and the Dead is that this album is definitely a thrash metal album. With some of Megadeth's releases over the years, the band was criticized for losing its thrash metal roots in favor of a more accessible sound. But this new album definitely follows the footsteps of their previous album, Dystopia, which was seen as a return to form after the mixed to negative reception of the album that came before, named Super Collider. The Sick, the Dying and the Dead features many compositions with fast tempos. Some of them, like Life in Hell, Night Stalkers, and We'll Be Back, have sections that are played at breakneck speeds. Fans of the early years of the band where Megadeth was playing at faster speed are definitely gonna be pleased. In some ways, the compositions with fast tempos on this album reminds me a little bit of the compositions on the first 4 studio albums by the band. The songs on The Sick, the Dying and the Dead often feature heavy and chaotic guitar riffs. When I say chaotic, I mean that in a good way. It is some kind of controlled chaos produced by the guitars that gives an edge to the album. In addition, the album also features a good melodic lead guitar work. There is a great balance that is achieved between the chaotic riffs played on the rhythm guitar and the melodic aspect of the solos and the guitar leads. The album also features a slick production and a good mix. On the lyrical level, the album seems to have been deeply inspired by current world events. The eponymous song of the album describes the spreading of a pandemic, and some of the lyrics describe themes associated with the Black Death. This was probably used as an allegory for the COVID pandemic. The songs Soldier On, Night Stalkers, and We'll Be Back revolve around the themes of war and military operations. The composition Dogs of Chernobyl deals with the subject of nuclear disaster and its effects. Life in Hell describes a situation where a person is addicted to himself, while Celebutant talks about the obsession to get fame, many people have in the social media age. Songs like Psychopathy talk about psychiatric disorders, and Mission to Mars revolve around the theme of space explorations. This last song, which describes the liftoff of a spacecraft at the beginning, could be seen as a nod to the 1969 song Space Oddity by David Bowie. In the song Sacrifice, from The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, it is the topic of witchcraft that is discussed. The standard edition of the album features 12 tracks. There is a digital version of the album available on places like Apple Music that contains 2 additional songs as bonuses. They are 2 fun covers. The first one, titled Police Truck, is a cover of the punk rock band Dead Kennedys. The second one, named This Planet's on Fire, is a cover of a Sammy Hagar song. In addition to being a Sammy Hagar cover, the recording also features this former Van Halen singer as a guest on vocals. There are 4 songs on this album that I recommend the most. They are Night Stalkers, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, Life in Hell, and We'll Be Back. Those 4 songs with fast tempos and chaotic riffs are particularly enjoyable. The topics of those songs like pandemic, war, and addiction to oneself are appropriately used. Night Stalkers notably features a narrated style passage by rapper Ice-T. He made a similar appearance in the past on the song The Illusion of Power from the 1995 Black Sabbath album Forbidden. So, was this album worth the long 6 years wait? Hell yes. I give this album a score of 8.5 out of 10. Too often when reviewing albums, people say, "This is the best album I have heard from this band in years." But I feel that this is definitely the case for this album. Although Megadeth have released many great albums in the last 20 years, I would say that this album is one of the best albums the band has released since the golden age of the band in the late 80s and early 90s. Usually, I prefer when bands retain the most original or classic members in their lineup as possible, but it seems that on this album, the presence of new or relatively new members like Dirk Verburen, Steve DiGiorgio, and Kiko Loureiro energized the band. I think that Verburen, for example, did a good job of adapting his playing to the style of the band. When listening to the album, although Megadeth is an established band, it sounds like a hungry band playing. I can only speculate, but I feel that the fact that Mustaine managed to beat cancer influenced him greatly while creating this album. You definitely feel his passion for music on this release. I have a hard time finding things I don't like about this album. There are only 2 elements I can think of that could have been ameliorated. The first one is the fact that although the guitar riffs are really good, I think that from song to song they sometimes sound a little bit similar to one another. The second thing is that some of the lyrics on songs like Celebutant and Mission to Mars can be a little bit cheesy at times for that type of metal. But hey, that's just me trying to find imperfections. Megadeth's new album is definitely inspired by its time. The fact the band managed to talk about topics related to current events without sounding too preachy or politicized is something that I appreciated. With events like the COVID pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the political polarization and social unrest in the West, the chaotic musical quality of the album definitely makes this release the soundtrack of the crazy times we currently live in. In that sense, the album's artwork was perfectly chosen to encapsulate the general feeling of this release. If The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead can be summarized in just a few words, I would say that the title of the cover, This Planet's on Fire, describes this album and the times we live in perfectly. If you like listening to The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, I recommend that you listen to the album Endgame by the same band. Like Megadeth's new album, Endgame is another highlight in the band's discography. Like The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead, it is in the classic thrash metal style and also features a slick production. Endgame contains a great selection of songs like Head Crusher, This Day We Fight, and The Right to Go Insane, and it is considered one of Megadeth's best albums of the last decades. If you enjoy listening to the new Megadeth release, I also recommend the album The Formation of Damnation by the band Testament. This 2008 album was a reunion of sorts for the band Testament and really didn't disappoint. This release, which was recorded and mixed by Andy Sneap, is pretty much the benchmark for modern thrash metal records. If you like thrash metal and have never listened to The Formation of Damnation, do yourself a favor and take the time to listen to this album. I doubt that you'll regret it. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to publish another video soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers!